Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see.
We got Peggy and Allison
Cool.
chatting it up in the chat.
I probably have to refresh this. Yeah, sorry.
What the heck?
Welcome to Books We Never Read.
Finally. Except for those, we have.
I'm Jason.
I'm Nicole.
And today is our last episode of All the Light We Cannot See by
Anthony Doerr.
Anthony Doerr.
I've kind of been dreading talking about the end of this. It was sad.
Oh, I'm ready.
I haven't had my good cry yet. So, before we get started, please make sure that this is the video that you intend to watch. We talk about the book up the assigned portion of the book as if you have also already read that part of the book. And for this book, it's the whole thing. So, if you have not read this whole book, back it up. Go back to the appropriate video for you. We have this playlisted. It's also playlisted on YouTube Music as a podcast. What happened?
Don't worry about it.
And we have tons of other books for you to read or follow along with as well. So go check them out.
And we're going to take a total switch of gears today. And we're starting Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. So we need to put that out.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. I woke up literally 30 minutes ago.
Sorry, Miss Yaris.
And I say it's a total switch of gears because the first book was, but watch it be sad too.
Aw, I had a good cry from the first.
The first one was sad. Yeah.
First one. That's where we are in book club life. And I was thinking while I was getting ready this morning, like, I'm really craving a Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
We need to find something I haven't read yet from him. That's the challenge. Yeah. Mr. Gaiman, it's time for another book.
Please, sir. Can you put out something just for that? So, yeah. Hey, while we're talking about that video announcing our next book, it is the first video we've ever had that got a negative comment, which I'm told means that we've made it.
Who said that?
It doesn't matter.
People.
Somebody who's biased. But I'm told that now we've made it. So.
We've made it.
That's very cool. Yeah.
So, thank you for your feedback. Shelby watched it twice. Is that the one with us dancing?
Yeah.
Glad you enjoyed.
So let's go ahead and jump in. Now that we have finished this book, we have to go watch the show.
Oh, yeah.
And it is, I believe, 4-hour-long episodes on Netflix. We will do a separate video sort of talking about that, maybe. The last time we did something like that, we didn't do it live. We just filmed it. But I think we were filming everything back then. And so we could choose to do it as a live if people wanted to watch it with us. Or we could just put it up and people could comment.
Yeah, if they want to
play along.
Like, slap a due date on it.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, make sure you've watched all 4 episodes by whatever day.
I'm concerned that I won't like it as much because what I liked most about this book was the language of the book. And that just gets lost. And I'm sure we'll do a fantastic job of showing the story because everybody who's in it I'm a huge fan of. But, I mean, it's got Hugh Laurie and Mark Ruffalo.
And it's got the little guy from Dark.
It's got the guy from Dark.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Life. That's what they say. Peggy says that she was waiting on us before starting the show.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, so let's do that. And, okay, so since we're chiming in, awesome, Shelby's willing to do a live too. Let us know, do we need to tackle one episode at a time or just tackle the whole thing?
Maybe that's something we sort of do maybe over the holidays. Usually we take a little holiday break.
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe watching something would be easier for us than reading something easy.
Sure, because that's something
we'll play around with that idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll work on it. Yeah. So what'd y'all think about the book as a whole, the ending of the book? I get a little stressed out getting close to the end of a really good book because I'm like, what if the ending sucks?
Yeah.
Like, what if this book was just amazing and the ending just let me down?
Yeah.
This ending did not let me down.
No. I really hadn't realized the ending was like relatively complicated. It ended 5 times for like five different
Yeah,
people, you know.
we really got to see how
Hmm.
everyone's storyline.
And it didn't have to. The story could have just ended, you know, Marie Laure gets picked up by some, you know, American soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
and
And that could have been the end of
that's
it.
the end of it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it didn't, because that's not where the story ends, you know. And we've talked about this with a couple other books where the story reverberates for generations, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was laughing to myself last night because in the very last sequence, it's Marie Laure walking her grandson home, and he's hung up about how he can drive the moped after his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not the things that she was worried about when she was his age.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is like, well, how petty, right? Like,
How beautiful.
but also like, how awesome is that? That that's what he had to worry about,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was all the nonsense. I mean, maybe it wasn't all the nonsense, but it wasn't. He could have done that without the Second World War, right? Like that could have happened. It's not like it set the stage for his enjoying that,
Right.
but it was despite that, you know,
Yeah.
that he was able to get to
Just
that point.
and it's just showing the juxtaposition of, like you think of Werner, who, what he could have been, and
Hmm.
he didn't get to live out past the age of what was he actually 16 or
Werner,
whatever,
yeah,
yeah. But then we see with Michelle, her grandson, you know, he has everything ahead of him,
yeah.
nothing but silly video games where he's getting killed or game overed,
I
and
thought that was a fun addition.
yeah, like, I died.
Well, I get to
She
just do it again. Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
almost died a
uh-huh.
hundred times.
Yeah. As an avid video gamer, and as somebody who's almost all my games include war, I really am aware, and I think about it a lot about how, well, this is kind of weird, you know, like, and I try to remind myself of like the trauma of like what I'm acting out here, and
Mm-hmm.
like how terrible these things really would be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I kind of like that that was added in right here. You
Yeah.
know, like, yeah, you get to get up and go again, but like Werner doesn't, and he didn't do it from the comfort of his couch, and
Right.
you know, it was good.
Yeah. So Werner's death just like just took my breath away. Like it was
Yeah.
just so quiet and
Mhm.
final as
It.
death is.
I was on the way to the grocery store last night when Werner died, and I had to
Audio.
back it up 3 times because I was like, okay,
Wait a minute.
I missed something, right?
Yeah. Mm-mm. But he was
They.
kind of like oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
No, 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 you go.
please. I will not say anything until you speak.
Well, I was gonna say it kind of seemed like he was dying.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
wasn't holding anything down. Maybe he was hallucinating a little
yeah,
bit. So I wasn't
yeah,
sure
yeah. He went
if
okay.
he had really gotten up and walked out, or if he was
Mm-hmm.
imagining getting up and
Mm-hmm.
walking
Mm-hmm.
out until
Yeah,
he stepped on.
and that's a good point. Like he was in the process of dying for, you know, like 2 chapters, but realistically, he died in half a sentence. It wasn't. I went back and checked. It wasn't a whole sentence. It was a half a sentence.
Mm,
It was just, and then we never talk about it. Like he just, that was it.
that's it.
And that is something that I think that this author is so good at, and like that's the thing I'm here for. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
was hooked when we saw the bombers coming over the islands, you know, at the beginning of the book, and it's that same sort of style. There's that cat. Um, it's that same sort of style that we have here, where there's something in the art of the way that he speaks
Mm-hmm.
that we're gonna lose out on in the show,
Yeah.
and it's the brevity with that he handles Werner's death that says everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelby mentions that, you know, she struggled through Werner's death, but it was really the Russians finding the 3 girls. That was the hardest part for me. Always will be. Um, but that was another scenario where like less is more, and he just said the bare minimum, and that
Mm-hmm.
said everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to talk about that part.
Well, and we don't have to. We
I
don't
know.
have
I
to. Yeah.
mean, but it was
Yeah.
very well written. And it's unfortunately a important part of what happened.
Yeah.
Something the girls have to live with forever, and
Hmm.
it makes Werner's story that much more tragic feeling, right?
Hmm.
You know, like he was doing his part
Yeah.
to try to protect her,
Hmm.
and that's kind of one of the points of this is, you know, what's it all for? At the end of it, we all die anyway.
Yeah. 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 Just like, yeah, the like all of it for this rock, all of it for
Yeah,
this,
race, all of it
for
for
the Lebensraum, all of it
just
for,
yeah,
like really all of this for that,
just
and
for what?
and it is true that the Russian army was not polite whenever they got to
Right.
Germany, but it is also, but we I don't want us to lose the fact that there are other Russian characters that we don't get to meet here who are not rapists, who are not,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
who
no,
are
that's
put into to the situation, but there are Germans who are rapists, and
right. No, it's
you know,
dangerous to try to create a single
yeah.
image of anyone.
Yeah. And I'm
In these
in no
books.
way are we absolving these three dudes, right? But just the horror of it on all sides,
Mm-hmm.
and the um, I think a lot about trauma just in general, like in life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about how like everything in life is just like a trauma response, everything, just everything, and just how much of that there is here.
Yeah, so Shelby mentions that she was shocked that the landmines were just all over the place and not close to the medical tent. They were everywhere. And a lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
don't realize that. But at the end of a war, you know, just because there's a ceasefire or just because it's over, who's the cleanup crew to pick
yeah,
up all these landmines? It is mostly children who find them.
yeah. They've actually made a special landmine machine that they're going to use in Ukraine once everything's done, because like we're having that problem again.
Yeah.
There are horrifying pictures of like the forest in France that are just like pockmarked today, right? Like it's a forest and it just like the ground doesn't look right, and it's just holes for as far as you can see.
Mm.
You know, from both the because you have to remember that this war was only 30 years after the First World War,
Right.
which arguably saw more devastation in certain areas. But one of
Yeah.
the other things when we talk about this and we talk about like what is it all for and what is it all worth fighting for, I keep thinking about the Sea of Flames and it being in this house and like in the little toy house, right?
Mm.
And in the end, like nobody gets it. There's some unnamed dude who finds it
Yeah.
in the grotto or
Mm-hmm.
whatever someday, and he recognizes its value or whatever. And I've been thinking about the Sea of Flames inside that house as like a representation of like the soul, that like in the end all that they got back was this house from Werner, right? But it didn't have the thing that mattered, like the rock, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the important thing wasn't in there anymore. Just like the important thing wasn't there. Like the important thing is Werner, and he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
They get his stuff back. They get
Right.
these things back, but the thing that matters that was inside that is gone. And that's it. That's my idea.
Yeah.
The Sea of Flames as the soul. And that someday somebody in the future finds that thing and recognizes that this is the important part, right? Like this thing is valuable. And that maybe there's hope for that future human race with that rando prince
Mm.
finds it.
And that might have just been not real, but like the projection of
Yeah,
the future that
sure.
someone will find it eventually
Yeah.
and they'll know what its value is and all that. But like it's all just metaphor. And
Hmm.
Shelby said that she felt like those mines being so close to the medical center and stuff, it's all a metaphor for, like the chaos that remains at the end of the war.
Yeah.
And we saw that a little bit too with Yoda's travels into France,
Hmm.
and her concern that people would be looking at her and
Hmm.
have some pretty harsh things to say about her or whatever. And that's so difficult. Again, like just because it's over, just because a treaty was signed, that doesn't change the attitudes of the people. That doesn't stop the fears and the trauma
Hmm.
responses and everything that's still building up. Just like she still has, a racing heart when she thinks of something about her
Hmm.
brother, and it triggers all that. People looking at her on the train, they're like,
Hmm.
oh, but they're just almost fellow countrymen. They're just
Yeah.
a train ride away from each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's, and we see this in every country. People that divide themselves by borders and think they're totally separate people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
There's just so much base. We like to focus so much on how different we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You speak a different language, you speak a different religion, you
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever. There's a book, and I cannot remember what it's called, and I don't think I have it in here, but it's focused on. It's easier for us to pick out the differences because the commonalities are so vast that like we don't even
Right.
think about them, right? Oh, you guys eat every day. I
Me
eat every day,
too.
right? You guys sleep at night. I sleep
Yeah.
at night, right? Like you guys do art. We do art, and your art might be different, but you are
Mm-hmm.
all doing art or whatever. And it's just kind of about there's so much in common that we have, and we just don't see it and focus on it. But you know, we're really not. We're just not different enough, and that's part of the problem sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Shelby and Peggy were talking about not ever really finding out what happened to Mortimer's dad. Was kind of
Mm-hmm.
gut wrenching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was important too, you know.
yeah, because that's true. I mean, just like how Werner ended up being a quick release into death and just a number, and
Yeah.
no one really knew who he was by the end of it. No one knew where he was buried or where he even really died. Just so many people got lost
Mm-hmm.
in that war.
Yeah, well,
And,
and the record keeping isn't great, and
right, because it's just too much.
Yeah.
You know, and everything's destroyed and on fire, and
yeah. Well, they were doing
moving
everything
from place
by
to
paper.
place. Yeah. And I mean, even now, even though we have the internet,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
it's still too much to keep up with. And just imagine, you know, how many people are going to be lost due to the silly wars that we have going on right now.
It would shock you to know how often people who are imprisoned are logged as being in two different places.
Oh man.
So,
I like how, you know, even though Morilor's father was probably already dead by the time she was in the attic and trying to work through dehydration and starving and all that, you know, his voice in her head, you know, don't make a sound, don't step out, don't go get a drink of water, you know, like just wait a little longer.
Yeah.
It was just good writing and good storytelling, and it's realistic, right? Like, you know, when you think you're all alone, you imagine someone there to hold your hand. You know, we have to have somebody even when we're all alone.
Well, and then her giving Werner credit for saving her life three times over.
Yeah.
You know, that was really cool. And that little that one day, not even a day, you know, that they got to spend together where they just looked at little books and talked about radios as best they could
Yeah.
in the middle of all this horror, you know, because that's who they would have been otherwise.
Right.
You know? Somewhere in there was my favorite line of this entire book.
Yeah.
And I told Nicole, and it's kind of gross, but my favorite line was, it's something about like, and in that one wet kilogram, whole world's turn. And it's just talking. It is the most beautiful description of a brain that I've ever heard. Not even of a mind, just like a literal brain. There was also a line in there about like towards the end of the war where there's all this like horrible stuff happening, and then it says like, and Hitler was drinking his nightly warmed milk, but was
Not
never boiled.
Just warmed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Weird.
But it was interesting the way the author did that. When towards the end, when he set the scene, he showed us kind of where everyone was at that time.
Yeah. Well, yes. And Hitler was somebody we had never like really talked about. I don't think he was ever. He might have been mentioned by name once, but otherwise we call him Führer, and we see him as like an idea and not as a person. And it was there at the placing of all the pieces.
Yeah.
That we see his literal location.
Just talking about like favorite lines from it or whatever. So one of my favorite themes in all the things that I read is dealing with like death and grappling with that and like time and all that stuff. So anyways, the quote that was my favorite that stood out to me, and I bookmarked it real quick. Time is a surfeit, a barrel they watch slowly drain. This was like to the miners. Um, but in reality, it should be seen as a glowing puddle you carry in your hands. You should spend all your energy protecting it, fighting for it, working so hard not to spill one single drop. And that quote was when they had that not even a whole day together. And he was like, this is something to be cherished. This is all I have. And we're not going to see each other again. But just, I don't know. I really like the quote. And then that encapsulated by that scene of, how his whole life was inspired by her grandfather and uncle's radio cast.
Yeah.
And then here he is to be with her, to have a chance to save her life. They never would have dreamt that their little radio broadcast would save their granddaughter and niece's life. It was so beautiful.
I mean, the ripples, right? Ripples through time.
Oh, I need a good cry. This book is so much. So they're, in the chat, they're asking, like, what was the connection between Werner and Von Rumpel?
They had just seen each other, right?
Right.
He was, Von Rumpel was running around town looking for the Sea of Flames, and he had seen Werner, and just thought he was like a buddy, right? He thought he was like a teammate.
But before that, I think Peggy is reminding us that Werner fixed his radio. That he's the one.
I think that's true too.
Who they had cake there, and his wife was all done up and made pretty and had fingernail polish on.
Oh. Okay, I didn't put all that together.
That was them, yeah. So he's pretty much the one who got him into the war.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Von Rumpel might not have recognized.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't recognize that at the end.
Right. Because at the end he's saying we're here for the same reason. They were not there for the same reason.
And they had recognized each other outside like a bread shop or something. Yeah. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, neither of them recognized each other at the end.
Yeah.
War had changed everyone. Yeah. And, Von Rumpel's a person too. And he's just drawn into all this too, but I just had no sympathy for him.
We are not required to feel bad for everyone. We can talk about hypothetical non-characters that were in this book, and we can feel bad about them, but we don't have to feel bad for everyone.
So while I'm over here just feeling so sad for Werner, whose life is cut short, and he's wanting to hold on to every little drip of time he can.
Yeah.
Von Rumpel had that moment too, where he's given 4 months to live because the cancer didn't get killed, and he counts down pretty much those days and. Has a whole little moment to himself, and I was just like, eh.
But I mean, and that's such an interesting, because if we're talking about trauma responses, and we're going to talk about like the ripple effects of all these things, he is also a product of all these ripples. But I guess personally, I feel like there is a point, like I agree, maybe not everything is your fault, but here you are, and you're like this now. And I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So I ain't going to do nothing.
Well,
right?
and we're going to be more sympathetic towards children because we're going to feel like they're just doing what they have to do to survive. Less sympathetic towards adults because we feel like you should be trying to stick it to the man somehow. But he was already on that side.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go to war either. He was also afraid. Yeah. We see Uncle Etienne. He's afraid, and we don't blame him for what he's doing, but we do blame.
Right.
So it's.
There are some things that I think
tricky.
are redeemable, right? Like, and then some others that I don't. Like,
it just depends on what side you're on.
Yeah.
And we probably should feel bad for Von Rumpel. He was dying. He was in pain.
Yeah. I mean, like, sure, I can understand all those things.
Yeah.
But like, if a tree falls and hits my lawnmower, it's not my lawnmower's fault that it's broken now. But I can either fix it or I can't fix it, and I'm not sure we can fix Von Rumpel. Right? Like, they have tried. So, like, let's move on, But, like, Werner has something in him left that is redeemable, and Marie-Laure and Etienne and all them, I think, do. And that's me playing God at who gets to be fixed or whatever, or who's worth saving. But we do that anyway, and so we have to accept that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to feel bad about that.
Speaking of, I also loved that question that Maury Laura asked her uncle, like, did I ruin your life by bringing all this destruction to your world? And he's like, no. He's like, I never lived before you were here, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that he got to live to be a nice old age. He died quietly in a bathtub, and, you know,
Yeah.
it was all good.
You know, we go the whole book where he never leaves his house. And then after Madame, whatever her name is, dies, and he realizes the danger that they've put Marie Laura in by going to the bread shop, he just says, like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do the next thing. And then he just goes. And nobody ever says, like, oh my God, he left the house, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not really. Everybody understands, like, this is kind of a big deal, but nobody says anything about it.
Yeah.
And it made me think of the Litany Against Fear from Dune. You know, he spent all this time locked away and hiding, and then had finally found something worth, you know, going out for again.
Yeah. I think the ghost chased him back in the house at one point. Like, I remember him coming back in, like, all out of breath.
Well, I think it's after he accomplished but whatever. And unfortunately, this is not like the scenario that would be ideal for reacclimating someone to going outside. It is the First World War all over again. And so I'm sure
like he had a reason to be afraid.
Yeah.
He knew what to be afraid of.
Yeah, this is the one time where his fear of going outside was helpful.
Yeah.
And he had to overcome it. So.
And then speaking of just beautifully sad endings, but Frederick, poor boy. Yeah. I mean, he was just so precious.
That was one of those endings that, like, by the time we got there, I had forgotten about him, right? Like, by the time we got there, I was like, oh, like, he's done. There's no more into this story. Like, we saw the end.
Yeah.
But giving him an end again, you know?
Yeah.
And watching his mother, who had been, like, so hung up on, you know, with a fancy new apartment to show off to the neighbors, and that was a good
well, and that was very thoughtful of Werner to rip the pages out of the book. I didn't think about why he was ripping the pages out of the Audubon book when he was describing it to Maury Laura. But it was eventually to get him back. And the fact that Volkenheimer, was that his name?
Volkheimer, yeah.
The fact that Volkheimer recognized that that's who those pages were for. You know, he's a character that kind of doesn't. He's not very dramatic, and he doesn't get a lot of attention, but like, he was a solid leader. Yeah. He loved Werner, and he clearly appreciated that Frederick didn't deserve the ending that he got.
Well, and Volkheimer's interesting because he's a more complicated character because we don't get anything from his perspective, and because nothing like outstandingly tragic comparatively happens to him.
Except the fact that he had to just go in and quickly murder people. And
yes, so that's the point,
away.
Right? He kills. There's that scene that's where, like, Werner really is like, oh, we're the baddies, right? Like where they go and they kill that little girl.
He didn't kill the little girl though.
Volkheimer didn't.
It was one of the Normans.
Gotcha. Okay.
Got a little trigger happy.
Yeah. Okay, I thought Volkheimer did that, but Volkheimer was like the muscle.
Will correct me.
And then watching him have to, like, live a normal life after having, like, been that muscle.
And we say a normal life, but the author gave some attention to the fact that he lived alone.
Right. No, not normal.
No
right,
pets,
but trying. Yeah.
Empty apartment. I mean, he was like just.
He's a shell.
You know, he was just this half life.
He was our empty house.
Yeah.
With no soul left. Yeah.
You know, for him to be so reflective, to, like, look at Werner and think, like, oh, what you could become. You know, what could he have become?
Sure.
You know, he had a whole future ahead of him too. He was also just a kid.
This is a heavy one. It might be one of the best books ever.
But it was either I do that noise or I just start sobbing right here on camera. I've been holding it. My throat's gonna be sore at the end of this because I'm just, like, trying not to cry.
Shelby says that Volkheimer is on her, like, zombie apocalypse team, and I definitely saw him. There's a character, I think, from Inglourious Bastards who, like, carries around, like, a wooden, like, board or maybe in like a zombie movie or something like that. And that's kind of how I saw him. He was just like, he was the baseball bat guy.
So I've never seen Glorious Bastards.
Really?
And when you mentioned there's a guy that carried around this wooden board, all I thought of, y'all gonna have to tell me what cartoon it was. But there was a cartoon, it was Ed, Edd n Eddy. Back in the day, they had a plank, and his name was Plank. And it was just a wooden board with a face painted on it.
Well,
That's all I saw.
Inglourious Bastards is about, you know, the same war, and it is a tough movie. It's a Tarantino, so
that'd be good.
he can do with the screen what
this man can
this
do
guy
with the
can
words.
do with the words. Yeah.
Well, I squeezed out one little tear.
This has also been making me want to watch Valkyrie again, which is
Never
probably
seen that
not as good as Inglourious Bastards, but it's a Tom Cruise movie.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Aren't they trying to kill Hitler?
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Whew. I don't want him on any other team about Volkheimer.
That's it.
Yeah.
Negan from The Walking Dead. That's it. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Volkheimer compartmentalized. He knew his job. He didn't like it. He was able to keep his humanity locked away, safe for a few. You know, okay, I liked how in the book the author tied together, timeline-wise, the scene where Volkheimer realizes either they risk blowing themselves up with the grenade or just die from starvation and dehydration. You know, that was the last chance they had, so they took that risk. Now it was at the same point, kind of, that Maury Lore had decided, I'm going to die right here anyway, so I might as well turn the radio up and just do the thing. You know, it was just, you know, not an uncommon method used by authors to, like, parallel the lives, but it was just really, really good.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Just going to have to go boo-hoo-hoo after this. Handmaid's Tale connection. Messages being passed using everyday errands. Oh, when she came across Von Rumpel and she had to eat the message, made me wonder what the message was, you know?
Yeah. There was another, like, I just like some of the details in all the books, because when I write things, I'm like, here's the thing. And like, I don't, like, this guy shows, you know, like you see the world, and some of it is in like the weird details that just get added sometimes. And there's a detail where one of the women, I think it's one of the French women, sees one of the American soldiers and was like, I bet they all look like him.
I'd be like, oh, this is good. Yeah.
And then again with, oh man, it's somebody's wife. I don't think it's Frederick's mother. I think it's Von Rumpel's wife. It's like admiring the one-legged neighbor.
Yep.
But like stuff like that, I love, because it just adds like, oh yeah, things like that happen, you know.
Well, and like back to where she's locked herself in the grotto, Von Rumpel's on the other side, and she ate that message while she's trying to figure out how to get him to go away. That stupid piece of paper is just slowly dissolving in her mouth and won't go down. Like I could taste it, I could feel it, like the pulp and the gritty and the whole thing. Like, it was just so well written.
Yeah.
So well written. Peggy mentioned in the chat this was a good book. She wants to see the study question books that she's seen. Yeah. I will say, when we first started the book club, I would cheat a little bit, and I would find like some study questions and book club questions, because I was like, what if we get on and we don't have anything to say? And so I would ask some questions, and I almost always had found them online.
We're original enough.
Well, sometimes
I've never even like thought about that.
But sometimes like
I could be smart.
Sometimes getting a good question thrown in there, Peggy, look one up real quick and throw them at us. It really helps you think of some things a different way. Like, would you have been brave enough at the point of, I'm either going to dehydrate or expose myself? Would you be brave enough to like just turn the radio on and just go for it at that point?
And turning on the radio does some good for me? Like,
well, in her case, it just kind of ended it. Yeah. He was going to hear it and get up there, and then she'd either fight her way out or be put out of her misery.
Taking like that extra leap is not like a hard thing for me. Like, I mean,
It is for me.
You know how I am. Like I'm just like you either have to do it or don't do it, and I can just do it. That's
and
not
you
really...
would throw the grenade knowing full well that it might just blow you up instead of let you
If
out.
we had exhausted all the options, right? Like in my mind, I think of it as stage fright. Like if you have to go on, if it's time to go on, you go on.
You're 20 minutes from dying, anyways.
Go on.
Just throw that sucker and see if you can get out. That's a
I'd have been hangry, honestly. I'd have been throwing grenades already.
You'd already eaten Volkheimer. You'd be like, sorry, bud.
I've been so bad.
Oh, yeah. Shelby says that she's excited to see the puzzle boxes and the city model in the next Netflix show.
Yeah.
That's going to be really important that they do that right. The descriptions in the book tells us how, like, the house is opened and it needs to be done right. It doesn't have to be the same.
Yeah.
But they need to do it right. I hope they get a real puzzle maker to make it.
That'd be cool.
Just so that it's real, you know. What a good dad he was.
Yeah. Yeah, he really knocked it out of the park.
He was a great dad. You know, he was a liar. But in all the best ways, just keeping her safe but also keeping her independent. You know, he taught her, he made sure that he enabled her to whatever capacity she wanted to be successful on her own, to be independent, to learn how to navigate the city, to learn and to be able to read and to have confidence in her abilities. And so she did go on and she became a doctor and, you know, did her little crustacean lab and I bet she smelled terrible, but she was brilliant.
Yeah.
And she like made it through.
Yeah. He would have been very proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man.
You know, and now I'm thinking about like all the I've read in a couple places or heard that Anthony Doerr is just kind of like fascinated by science, and obviously you can see that throughout this book, with all his characters being like scientists in some way, right? And that's kind of shown as like this juxtaposition to war, right? You have all this destruction, but then you have all this, you know, hope, and you have like this light, I guess, right? Like you have the thing that is going to better humanity, but war is also science, you know, and we maybe that's something I wish we could have like explored a little bit more, and we do, with Werner making a radio that can triangulate the position of other people so that we can go and kill them, right? That's what he's doing. But it would have been interesting to kind of explore that sort of like dark side of science a little more.
Well, I think that part is overexplored.
Really?
I do. You know, like...
Oh, with like other books.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, I mean, blaming the scientists for understanding how to split an atom, you know. Well, like, it's just the phenomena of the world around us.
Yeah.
Like, and we need to know how things work. And you don't blame the scientists. They're not the ones that chose to use it for bad. It was...
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
No, but I like that this didn't exploit that.
Well, I didn't need every single thing to be that way, you know, but...
I'm sure we could find something else.
It's just I like my books complicated, and I like everybody dead at the end. So,
and they were. So why do you think it's called All the Light We Cannot See?
I don't know. I didn't think about that one.
You know, they talk about the radio waves and the light spectrum. Like all light is really invisible from the radio shows.
I mean, like it's obviously has multiple meanings. You know, part of it is in reference to radios, but it's, I mean, maybe the light is hope. You know, like the light at the end of the tunnel that these characters can't see. Marie Lore literally because she is blind. You know, but yeah, I think it's supposed to be, you know, the next day, right? Like the rising sun that nobody can see coming because of the horrors of what they're dealing with, but. I guess that'd be like the metaphorical meaning.
I think it very much has to do with, you know, like the radio show, the grandfather and the uncle having no idea that the information that they were casting, you know, would have some huge effect on their family and smaller but still important, a huge effect on other people as well. You know, Werner wasn't the only one to hear those shows.
Yeah.
You know, so that information inspired other children too.
Yeah.
Clearly it inspired Jada and
Uh-huh.
she grew up to be a teacher, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't die, you know. So like there's that like
Right.
force that kept it going, but it's all these little things that we do that we can't see what the true benefit is of what we're doing,
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
and but there's that hope
Yeah.
that it affects everybody
Yeah.
in a positive way. You know, with Madame and the ladies and their shenanigans, even once
Mm-hmm.
they started getting the messages, they didn't even know what they meant. You know, they couldn't see what it was they were doing. They
Mm-hmm.
hoped that they were doing good.
Yeah.
But then on the bad side of that, those German boys couldn't see the bad that they were doing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I keep coming back to this idea I have about the sea of flames as the soul, and like the light within people that we cannot see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have like an articulate thought there, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna include that in my metaphor stuff.
Well, and absolutely, and I mean, and that drew Werner and Morilor together,
Mm-hmm.
that light within them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that without a war, had they met, they would have been great friends. Also,
Yeah.
they both were so curious and
Mm-hmm.
interested in the world around them. And even through a war, that light brought them together.
Yeah.
Positive characters are the light, says Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
She said it's a metaphor for all the stories of hope and perseverance that get lost in the war. And maybe each person in war is a light, and we can't see all of them,
Yeah.
says Peggy. It's a good one. Good little question to ponder. I'm going to need either a cry or a nap. Something's a brewing. Whew. I just finished last night, and I do this to books like these. Like, I save them to the last minute, and I don't have time to process them, and then I just want to cry about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much.
Yeah.
I love historical fiction, but it always does this to me. Peggy says, oh, the book questions are boring. One good one is about Werner's love of radios and machines, but he's then grossed out by the something machine idea.
Great machine idea.
Sorry, the heart's in the way. I can't see. What's the great machine idea?
I think it's in reference to like the Reich.
Oh. Gotcha. Yeah. This was a really good one. If you're just jumping on board, 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Oh yeah, for sure, I'm gonna recommend this one.
That was good.
Yeah, like even if you watch the Netflix show, I don't care.
I'm so bummed out.
You have to go read this thing. Yeah.
I know, but it was beautiful, right?
Yeah,
like,
it was great.
Yeah. In one book, you see kind of the worst and the best of humanity. So. I'm ready for shifting gears. Bring me some dragons.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Do you have anything else?
No, I feel desolate. Like I feel after things like this, I need to. This is so my favorite movie of all time is The Fountain. Go figure. But like this is how I feel at the end of The Fountain, where I just sit there and I am nothing. Yeah.
Just have to. Oh, I rank it up there with The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Shelby, I've only watched that. I've never read it, but gosh, that was sad. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. Give me a year to recover from this, and then we'll watch it with the striped pajamas. Oh gosh, that was tough. That was tough. She was sobbing reading the book. Look, the book that made me sob the most ever, like while I'm reading it, sobbing. Can't see the words because I'm sobbing. Like my eyes are all blurry and I'm just fighting. But you got to keep reading 1,000 Splendid Suns. Man, if you haven't read it, you got to read it. It was a life changer. What else you got? Sorry. Yeah.
Nothing.
I'm just going off the rails a little bit. Okay, so let's end on a high note.
Yeah. This week in history.
Oh, people were born and
Stuff happened.
stuff happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see. How cool would it be if you had the ability to make, first of all, to even make a scale model of the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Like, that's some craftsmanship right there. then to be able to turn some of them into puzzle boxes. Like, how do you even make a puzzle box?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. That was cool.
That's not within my capacity.
No.
How cool is that?
I feel like people back in the day always had but of course we don't get told the stories about like the guy who couldn't, right?
Right. Like the, million people that could.
Right.
We hear the one guy that could.
Whenever I like watch movies or things, I'm like, people back in the day could do so much cool stuff and I can't. But they couldn't. They were like me. They couldn't
It was
either.
just this one special person that makes us all look bad. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
And like even Etienne, his... Sorry, I'm reeling this back in so we can have a little bit of like positivity before we leave. Etienne's imagination, which I think also is what made coping with war so hard for him. I think the more imaginative you are, the more memories and ghosts you have kind of floating around. But his imagination, them on the couch, the flying couch, to go see all the worlds together, the fact that he could continue building a world for Mori Lore that she could experience and live in and learn the way her father had built for her.
Yeah.
That was incredible. That's not a skill everyone has either.
Yeah, that was good.
Pretty great. This book also makes me want to go go reverse engineer some stuff. Like I want to like unscrew my, CD player and like see how it works.
Don't do that. It's not going back together.
Yeah. Again, just cool skills. Neat.
Yeah, electricity is magic.
It is magic.
It just is.
So I was about to be like, speaking of magic, I got this robotic vacuum cleaner.
We can tell people about it somewhere else.
Oh my god. Those things are magic. Yeah. Okay, anyways. That's all I got. I'm done. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you all for reading this book with us. We had a blast. We hope that you did too. Now on to something totally different. And we need to go ahead and put it up, but we're going to do our syllabus for Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros.
Yeah,
next.
We'll pop that up.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get into something that's a little cathartic.
This was cathartic.
Well, I need a catharsis for my catharsis.
Catharsis is when you experience something that's or you read about something that's very tragic, very sad, or whatever, and you cry it out, but then you feel better about your life.
Yeah.
It's that cathartic experience.
I need reverse cathartic. Reverse.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, man. If y'all have any other historical fiction recommendations, please pop those in the chat or in the live. It's about to end, but in the chat. As always, we're on Goodreads, by the way, if you want to take the chat off YouTube. We forgot to mention that at the beginning. I'm just making sure we checked all our boxes. But yeah, happy reading. Thanks for reading with us. I'm going to go cry. And then we'll post our little syllabus.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Look at all the leaves.
Yeah. What a nightmare.